Welcome to Sputnik, orbiting the world with me, George Galloway.
And me, Gayatri.
Following the death of Hugo Chavez, his close friend and ally, Nicolas Maduro, won both the subsequent presidential election and the regional elections held late last year. Since then, it's all gone wrong.
A newly energized and well-funded US-backed operation is clearly underway on the streets of the country. Real economic and social problems are being exacerbated and exaggerated, and street power is being deployed to delegitimize the government.
For someone my age, it's all eerily familiar of the days of the original 9/11. This first 9/11 happened in 1973 in Chile, when the elected president, Salvador Allende, was overthrown in a CIA-backed operation. Following Allende's murder, the wholesale slaughter of his supporters, and a mass exodus out of the country of any Democrats who could get out, the fascist dictatorship of General Pinochet then ruled the roost for the next quarter of a century.
Chile today is ruled by a communist Christian Democrat coalition, the first supporting the government of Venezuela, the latter supporting the protesters on the streets. But Mercosur, an economic and political agreement of the South Americas, is clear about the situation and condemns the clear efforts to destabilize the democratic government of Venezuela.
Joining us to make sense of the streets of Caracas is Francisco Dominguez of the Venezuelan Solidarity Campaign. Francisco, looking at the news, there's a real parallel between what's happening in the Ukraine and Kiev and what's happening in Venezuela. It looks to me, as a veteran of these matters, like a pretty well planned and orchestrated push to regime change in both countries. Is that how it looks to you?
Not only looks that way, but actually it's been declared by the people who are actually organizing this. Leopoldo Lopez, the main person behind this, leading it, and Maria Corina Machado, an MP of the opposition, and Antonio Ledesma, who is the elected mayor of Caracas, have said that declared that they decided to launch a campaign called La Salida, which in Spanish means the ousting, and with the declare aim to actually remove Maduro from office before he ends his mandate in 2019, since they cannot win the vote, because they lost, as you said correctly in the introduction, they lost the presidential election in April 2013 by 1.5%, which was close, but it was still a win. But they lost massively the municipal elections on the 8th of December by 12% difference. It was a landslide. And as a result of that, they came to the conclusion that this was not acceptable. I think that what exacerbated this was the fact that Maduro, with the best of intentions in the world in order to, for the good of the country, offered them a dialogue. And several sections of the opposition did respond very positively. I think this is designed not only to torpedo those possible collaboration and conversation and dialogue, but also perhaps push it hard enough to overthrow the government. I think that's what it is.
They must have taken a green light, I expect, from Washington for this. Is there any evidence of the United States' involvement in this?
There is long-term and short-term evidence. Obama's just taken a very hard line, saying that he's very concerned about the violence in Venezuela and demanding that Maduro actually goes for a real dialogue. I don't know what he means by that. But, Maduro has offered the real dialogue. Sections of the opposition have responded positively, and it's only a very small minority of people. The person who actually leads the opposition, this effort now, is called Leopoldo Lopez. He is the leader of a political party called Voluntad Popular, the Popular Will, which in the last municipal elections got only 6% of the vote. So there are a significant minority within that majority, and I don't think without the support of the United States they would have gone for it. And the long-term evidence is this. Since 2002, and there is hard evidence about this, is public information more or less, the United States, through the National Endowment for Democracy, the International Republican Institute, the National Democratic Institute, has given the opposition in Venezuela $120 million, which if one were to translate it into British terms, that would be $1.2 billion of money to actually overthrow, destabilize the government of Britain.
I understand that Lopez has given himself in for arrest. What's about that?
Well, he made very, how can I put it, macho statements through Twitter that he was going to go for a confrontation and so on. Everybody was extremely worried. He called on demonstrations. He got some supporters, about 5,000, which is small in terms of Venezuelan terms, but it was his supporters in his district. And rather than going for a confrontation, he decided to get himself in. Maduro later on and Diosdado Cabello, you know, the two key people in the government, Diosdado Cabello is the president of the National Assembly, they said that, you know, they were extremely worried about he being assassinated by the right wing in order to cause this complication, this trouble, which will justify God knows what else. And so he gave himself to him, and the National Guard was surrounding the house all the time, the house where he was supposed to be in hiding, protecting him. When he came out, they followed him and protected him all the way until he gave himself in. And his wife, Lopez's wife, has gone on television, and he actually gave an interview to CNN where he confirmed this. So thanks to the government of Venezuela, you know, a repetition of what happened in 2002, where God knows who shoot fires, kill people, in order to cause the maximum havoc.
Well, and yet the Pavlovian reaction of some predictable sources is now being played out. Amnesty International have this week called for an action across the whole world for people to protest to President Maduro about the raid on the opposition headquarters. As you explain, it's a tiny fragment of an opposition, which is by definition, in any case, a minority of the population. 6%, extremely radical. Amnesty has called on people to protest against Maduro's arrest of this man, Lopez. How steady in the water is the ship of state in Venezuela?
When you have the support of the United States, nothing can be very certain. And where the full power of the empire, to use more precise words, to be deployed fully against Venezuela, God knows what will happen. Their complication is they cannot obtain significant support inside the country to destabilize the government enough in order to cause trouble. The difficulty is that the government faces serious economic complications, and this has got to do with inheriting a very difficult economy which depends too heavily on oil, is not diversified at all, and because they are the victim of their own success, because the government has done so much redistribution of income since 1999 up to now, the 60% poorest part of the country actually has seen their income increase by more than 500%. And because there is no economic diversity, the result is that people have lots of money in their pockets and they haven't got things to buy. The result of it, the government has to import things, so the currency becomes very weak. And as a result of this, there is an official exchange rate, which is 6.30 bolivares, and there is a black market one, which is 10 times that. The result is, you know, all sorts of complications, and people are using this deliberately. There is economic sabotage against the government, deliberately by sections of the right-wing business, like they did to Allende. There is overpricing, there is hoarding, and in terms of overpricing, they discovered the government when they went for inspecting businesses and shops and so on, big businesses. The overpricing went to 100%, 200%, 1,000%, 2,000%. There was one case of 12,000%. So the moment Maduro began to do this, I mean, immediately the population supported him. And he said to the opposition, he said, right, I want you to discuss this matter with me because it's not acceptable. And many businesses actually have collaborated with the government in order to. Maduro just now, literally 2 days ago, 1 day ago, signed a very good deal with Samsung, you know, the electronic giant, yeah. And out of which Venezuela is going to get a significant amount of technology and computers and so on. And Maduro just offered, because of this agreement with Samsung, a tablet to every single university in the country, free of charge. So that gives you an idea of the potential, but also the dangers.
The comparison I drew in the introduction You and I both remember it well. This kind of street power, feeding on economic and social dissatisfaction with the support of the US, led to the murder of President Allende and tens of thousands of others, the exile of hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of others. At the time, the ultra-left used to demand of President Allende that he arm the people. I opposed this demand at the time, thinking that it would be a provocation that might provoke a coup. And of course, the coup happened anyway. What steps is President Maduro taking to defend the gains of the revolution?
I mean, your reference to Chile touches my heart because I'm Chilean myself. I'm a former exile, so I know very well what was done. And the power that can be deployed in the streets by fascist thugs is really, really powerful and can cause havoc. My understanding is that the government is using all the legal and constitutional mechanisms which are totally sufficient as far as they are concerned in order to defend the revolution. And despite the pressure on the armed forces, despite provocations, infiltration, attempts to bribe some of them, God knows what, the unity of the armed forces behind the Bolivarian constitution is totally solid. Melendez, the commander-in-chief of the armed forces, is a woman. 2 days ago, she made a statement saying the armed forces, the Bolivarian armed forces in Venezuela will not accept any government that doesn't come out from the democratic will of the people. So that's totally clear. There's been not one single general, officer of any kind, at any level, that actually has expressed any dissent, dissatisfaction, disobedience or anything, which means that the solidity of the armed forces behind the project, which, you know, Chavez managed to galvanize and crystallize, is still entire. So it seems to me in that sense is totally sufficient. The complication is that the masses want to participate, defending the revolution, organizing peace marches, and the thugs are being organized to set upon them and killing some of them, as just happened in Valencia, you know, just today.
Well, it's a very dangerous moment, not just for Venezuela, but for all of Latin America, because, of course, if such a thing were to happen in Venezuela, a repetition of the Chilean events of 1973, then none of the democratic governments in Latin America would be safe. So we'll have to keep a watching brief on that. Francisco Dominguez of the Venezuelan Solidarity Campaign, thank you very much for joining us. Coming up after the break, his original name was Little, but the shadow that he cast has proved long. It's the anniversary of the assassination of Malcolm X.